There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself. When the calls stop, the texts stop, the long messages trying to make him understand stop, one day you decide you're done giving your energy away to someone who doesn't value it. And instead of fighting, instead of chasing, instead of proving, you go quiet. At first it feels strange, almost unnatural, because you've been conditioned to believe silence means weakness. But then something powerful begins to unfold. He starts to notice. Silence is louder than any argument you could ever have. It makes people uncomfortable, because without your words to grab onto, they are left alone with their own. Without your attention feeding them, they are forced to face themselves. And when you go silent day by day, something happens that he never expected. You start taking back control, and he starts losing his. He will act like it doesn't matter, like your absence doesn't affect him. But don't be fooled. People notice when energy leaves their life, even if they pretend otherwise. That silence begins to echo. It sits with him in the quiet moments, when no one's watching. He wonders why you aren't reaching out. He replays his own behavior. He feels the void your presence used to fill. And here's the truth. Silence doesn't just protect your peace. It makes him face the consequences of losing it. Because here's what no one tells you. Silence is not passive. Silence is active power. It is intention. It is the clearest message you can send without saying a single word. And as the days go by, as you hold your ground, that silence becomes undeniable. It shifts the balance. It changes what he thinks, what he feels, and most importantly, what you begin to believe about yourself. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people think silence means weakness, passivity, or surrender. They believe that if you're not speaking up, shouting, explaining, or fighting for yourself, then you're losing. But that's not the truth. Silence, when chosen intentionally, is one of the strongest forms of power you can hold. It's not that you don't have words to say, it's that you've realized your energy is too valuable to waste on someone who doesn't deserve it. Silence is the weapon of the disciplined, the confident, and the self-aware. And when you go silent day by day, the effect is far greater than anything you could have achieved by chasing or begging. Why is silence so powerful? Because most people expect a reaction. They expect anger, they expect questions, they expect confrontation. That's the game they're prepared to play. But silence doesn't play the game. Silence removes you from the field entirely. And suddenly, they don't know what to do with themselves. Your quiet presence creates uncertainty. Your lack of response forces them to notice the absence of your energy. And in that absence, they feel something they never expected to feel, discomfort. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone thrive off attention? Whether positive or negative, they can live with you arguing, they can live with you crying, they can live with you trying to convince them. Because as long as you're engaging, they're still in control of your emotions. But silence removes the supply. Silence says, I no longer give you the power to see me react. That's when the balance shifts. At first, silence will feel hard for you. You'll want to reach out. You'll want to explain why you're pulling away. You'll want to make sure he understands your point of view. But the strength of silence is that it refuses to explain. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need acknowledgement. It simply exists. And in its existence, it communicates more than words ever could. Because silence says, I've made my decision, and I don't need your approval. Over time, silence grows heavier. On day 1, he might brush it off. She's just upset. By day 3, he wonders why you haven't caved. By day 7, he starts questioning himself. Did I push her too far? Is she moving on? Has she realized she doesn't need me? Your silence plants seeds of doubt in his mind, and those seeds grow the longer you hold your ground. And here's the irony. While you're silent, he's the one who starts overthinking. He's the one replaying moments. He's the one searching for answers. Silence flips the script. But the real beauty of silence is not just in what it does to him, it's in what it does for you. Silence gives you space. It clears the noise. When you're not obsessing over his every move, you can hear your own voice again. You can feel your own needs. You can ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I deserve? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? Silence isn't about punishing him. It's about healing you. It allows you to step out of reaction mode and into reflection mode. There's also a discipline in silence that strengthens you. Every time you resist the urge to reach out, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than your impulses. Every day you hold back from sending that text or making that call, you're building resilience, and resilience is what transforms you. Because silence is not a lack of power, it's the refinement of it. It's the art of knowing when your words will make no difference, and choosing instead to let your absence speak for you. Silence is also deeply unsettling for people who are used to control. If he thrived on your attention, your validation, your energy, your silence becomes the one thing he can't manipulate. He can dismiss your words, argue with your feelings, or twist your perspective, but he can't twist silence. It leaves him with nothing to grab onto. And that lack of control creates cracks in the image he's tried to build. Suddenly, it's not you chasing, it's him wondering. And let's be clear, silence is not about playing games. It's not manipulation. It's about boundaries. It's about saying, I will no longer exhaust myself trying to make someone see what they refuse to see. It's about protecting your energy, your peace, and your dignity. Silence isn't passive, it's an active decision to prioritize yourself. And that's why it's powerful, because it's rooted in strength, not in fear. Over time, your silence becomes your armor, not the kind of armor that makes you hard or cold, but the kind that shields you from unnecessary pain. It keeps you from giving your power away. It reminds you that you don't owe everyone an explanation. It teaches you that not every battle is worth fighting. And most importantly, it proves that you don't need anyone else's response to validate your choice. What he thinks when you go silent is his business. What you gain when you go silent is yours. And what you gain is priceless: clarity, control, strength, and peace. Because silence is not empty, it's full of answers. And every day you remain silent, you reinforce the truth that you are no longer available for disrespect, manipulation, or half-hearted effort. So the next time you wonder if silence is weakness, remember this: silence is the language of self-respect. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't prove, it simply withdraws. And in that withdrawal, it creates the most powerful message of all. I don't need to fight for a place in someone's life who doesn't know my value. My silence already says it all. When you go silent, his first thoughts are not as calm as he may try to appear. At the very beginning, silence doesn't register as power to him, it registers as disruption. He's used to a pattern: you react, you explain, you express, maybe you argue, maybe you cry, maybe you reach out even when you shouldn't. But there was always movement, always something to reassure him that he still had space in your life. When that suddenly disappears, his first reaction is confusion. He'll wonder why you haven't responded. He'll ask himself why the message he sent hasn't been answered, why the call went unanswered, why you didn't come back with the explanation or reaction he was counting on. In his mind, silence is unnatural, because silence means unpredictability, and unpredictability makes people nervous. When you were giving him energy, positive or negative, he could gauge where you stood. But the moment you pull back and go quiet, he loses that sense of control. That's where confusion begins. The confusion is often masked in arrogance. He may shrug and think, she's probably just upset. She'll be back. He might tell himself you're just playing hard to get, or that you're trying to make a point. He might even laugh it off at first, believing he knows you so well that your silence is temporary. But underneath that front is a flicker of curiosity. What if this time is different? What if she really means it? What if she's not coming back this time? That's when the confusion starts to eat at him. You see, silence is not what he expects from you. And when someone doesn't act in the way you predict, it forces you to pay attention. He begins to notice things he never noticed before. The empty phone notifications, the lack of your name lighting up his screen, the absence of your presence in his day-to-day life. It may seem small, but it isn't. Human beings are creatures of habit. And when you suddenly break a habit, it unsettles them. It makes them realize that what they once took for granted is no longer guaranteed. At this stage, his curiosity begins to grow. He may not admit it to anyone, but in his mind, the questions start forming. Why isn't she calling? Did I say something wrong? Did she find someone else? Did she finally realize she deserves better? He won't always say it out loud, but those thoughts creep in during quiet moments, when he doesn't have distractions to cover them up. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects back his own behavior, and he can't escape that reflection. The curiosity can also come out in subtle actions. He might check your social media more often. He might send a casual text to check in. He might even throw a small bait, something vague or lighthearted, to see if you'll break your silence. That's not genuine care. That's him trying to test whether he still has influence over you. And every time you stay silent, his curiosity deepens. He wonders what shifted inside you, what gave you the strength to withhold the reaction he counted on. Confusion and curiosity are powerful emotions because they lead to self-reflection. When you keep engaging, he never has to reflect. He just reacts to your reactions. But when you go silent, he's forced to sit with his own thoughts. He has no choice but to question. He begins to remember the moments where he dismissed you, the times he didn't listen, the times he assumed you'd always be there no matter what. Silence forces him to see the gap between who he thought you were and who you are becoming. Here's the most important part. This stage is not about him. It's about you. His confusion is a sign that you've disrupted the cycle. His curiosity is evidence that you've shifted the balance of power. But more than that, it's proof that you are changing, because silence is not only about what he thinks, it's about what you stop giving. It's about reclaiming your energy and redirecting it to yourself, instead of constantly feeding his ego. And yes, he may try to cover his confusion with indifference. You may act like your silence doesn't bother him. He may even try to flip it back on you, acting as if he's the one pulling away. But don't be fooled, those are defense mechanisms. When someone is truly unbothered, they don't need to prove it. The fact that he reacts at all to your silence, whether by checking up on you or pretending not to care, is proof that he feels the shift. Silence has a weight, and whether he admits it or not, he feels it. Curiosity also creates fear. The longer you stay silent, the more he starts to realize that maybe he overestimated his place in your life. Maybe you're stronger than he thought. Maybe you've woken up to your own value. And that thought alone unsettles him, because it means he may have lost something he assumed he could always return to. That fear is not your responsibility. It's the natural consequence of your choice to remove your energy. So when you go silent day by day, remember this. His first thoughts will always be confusion and curiosity. He will wonder what happened, why you're not responding, and what it means. But those thoughts are not your concern. What matters is that, for the first time, he is the one left with questions, and you are the one holding the answers. Your silence is not just absence. It is presence. It is power. It is the shift that makes him realize that your energy was never something he was entitled to. It was something he should have valued. Doubt is a dangerous thing, not for you, but for him. When you go silent, the first emotions he feels are confusion and curiosity. He's unsettled, wondering what's changed, why you're not reacting the way you used to. But as the days stretch on, confusion turns into something deeper, something that begins to gnaw at his confidence, doubt. And doubt is the crack in the armor that forces awareness. At first, he was sure you'd come back. He told himself it was just a phase, that you were being dramatic, that you'd break your own silence before long. That belief gave him comfort. But then the days pass. His phone stays quiet. His little tests don't get the responses he counted on. His control starts to slip. And slowly the thought begins to creep in. What if she really doesn't need me anymore? That single thought is enough to change the entire dynamic. For the first time, he begins to question himself instead of you. He replays arguments in his mind, wondering if he went too far. He thinks about the moments when you tried to tell him how you felt, and he dismissed you. He remembers the times he thought you'd never leave, and he wonders if he underestimated your strength. Doubt makes him face the possibility that his choices have consequences he never wanted to admit. This shift into doubt is powerful because it forces him into awareness of his behavior, awareness of the way he treated you, awareness of the role he played in losing your presence. Your silence doesn't give him the distraction of your voice or your explanations. All he has is himself, and the echo of what he did or didn't do. And in that quiet, he can't escape the truth anymore. But let's be clear, this isn't about him suddenly transforming into a better man overnight. Doubt and awareness don't automatically lead to change. Sometimes they lead to denial. Sometimes they make him defensive. Sometimes they push him to double down on his arrogance. But regardless of how he reacts, one fact remains: he can no longer ignore the reality that you are not chasing him anymore. You have broken the cycle, and he feels it. The doubt grows strongest in the little moments. Maybe it's when he sees you haven't checked his stories, when you don't like his posts, when your name doesn't pop up where it always used to. Maybe it's when he's lying awake at night scrolling through his phone and realizing the one person who always reached out hasn't. Maybe it's when he tries to convince his friends that he's fine, but deep down he knows something is shifting. Doubt isn't loud, it's quiet, but it lingers, and it becomes harder to ignore. And awareness follows doubt like a shadow. Awareness makes him remember how much he leaned on your energy without giving back. Awareness makes him realize how consistent you were, how forgiving you were, how available you were, and how all of that is gone now. Awareness is uncomfortable because it forces him to confront the truth that he may have mistaken your loyalty for weakness, and he may have mistaken your patience for permanence. The interesting part is this: silence creates space, not just for him to reflect, but for you to see clearly too. As his doubt grows, so does your clarity. You begin to see his reactions for what they are, not for what you wish they were. You begin to notice the difference between real remorse and temporary discomfort. You start to see whether his awareness pushes him toward growth, or whether it just makes him scramble to regain control. Silence doesn't just test him, it reveals him. And this is where the balance truly shifts. Before, you were the one drowning in doubt, always wondering if you were enough, if he cared, if you mattered. But now the roles are reversed. He's the one carrying those questions. He's the one doubting whether he still has a place in your life. He's the one realizing that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means strength. And with every day that you hold your silence, his awareness of your strength grows. Doubt is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary, because without doubt, there is no awareness. Without awareness, there is no growth. Whether he grows from it or not, that's his journey, not yours. What matters is that your silence has disrupted the story he told himself. The story where he thought you'd always come back. The story where he thought he could treat you however he wanted without consequences. That story is gone now. And in its place is a new truth. One where you are no longer predictable, no longer available, no longer willing to give your energy to someone who doesn't value it. So when he shifts from confusion to doubt, and from doubt to awareness, remember this: you've already won, because this shift is proof that your silence is working. It's proof that you've reclaimed your power. And most importantly, it's proof that you no longer live in the shadow of his decisions. You've stepped into the light of your own. Silence makes him doubt. Silence makes him aware. Silence also makes you stronger. And the longer you hold it, the more undeniable the truth becomes. Not just for him, but for you too. That truth is simple. You don't need to beg to be valued. You don't need to explain your worth. You don't need to fight to be seen. Your silence already says everything. When you go silent day by day, when you stop pouring energy into words that fall on deaf ears, the question that begins to haunt him is simple. What does this mean about me? What does she really think of me? But underneath that is a deeper truth. What he really thinks about you begins to shift in ways he never expected. Silence is not neutral. Silence forces him to form judgments, to fill in the blanks, to create a story about who you are now. And that story often reveals far more about him than about you. At first, he thinks you're bluffing. He thinks you're doing this to get attention, that your silence is a game you'll eventually drop. He convinces himself you can't really live without him because for so long your actions told him otherwise. You were there when he called, you answered when he texted. You argued when he disrespected you, because you still cared enough to fight. In his mind, silence feels temporary, because the old you was predictable, reliable, always available. But when the silence stretches on, that belief begins to crack. Then he starts to think, you've changed. And that thought unsettles him, because change means he can't read you anymore. It means you're no longer the same woman he felt he had figured out. He starts to notice that you're acting differently than before, stronger, calmer, detached. What he really thinks about you in these moments is shaped by fear. Fear that you've discovered your own strength. Fear that you've outgrown him. Fear that you've realized he was never giving you what you deserved. And fear, even if he won't admit it, looks a lot like respect. He may even start to admire the very silence that frustrates him, because deep down, people respect what they can't control. Your silence becomes a form of discipline. He didn't expect from you. He may not like it, but he notices it. He notices the restraint, the boundaries, the refusal to be pulled back into a cycle that exhausted you. And though he might never say it out loud, a part of him begins to think, she's stronger than I gave her credit for. But here's the twist. What he thinks about you will often swing between respect and regret. On one hand, he respects your silence because it proves you're not desperate. On the other, he regrets the times he didn't listen, the moments he took you for granted, the ways he underestimated your patience. Silence has a way of replaying those memories for him. Not because you're reminding him, but because his own conscience is. And the more he thinks about what he lost, the more he realizes your silence is not emptiness, it's closure you've given to yourself. He might even begin to romanticize you in his mind. Distance and silence often do that. He remembers the good times more vividly than the bad. He thinks about the laughter, the comfort, the stability you provided. Without your presence, the contrast between then and now sharp. What he really thinks about you in these moments is that you were valuable, that you mattered, that you weren't replaceable. Silence has a way of elevating you in his memory, even if he once failed to appreciate you in reality. Of course, not every thought is kind or respectful. Sometimes silence triggers anger in him. He may think you're cold, unfeeling, or cruel. He may tell himself you're doing this to punish him. He may paint you as heartless to soothe his ego. But even then, notice the pattern. He's still thinking about you. Your silence is still commanding his attention. Negative or positive, he cannot escape the reality that your absence is louder than your presence used to be. And that alone shows the power you hold. Eventually, as the silence deepens, what he really thinks about you settles into one undeniable truth. You are no longer his to define. He can call you stubborn, strong, cold, wise. It doesn't matter, because his thoughts about you are only reflections of what he is losing. Again, in silence is freedom. Freedom from being trapped in his perception. Freedom from caring what he really thinks. Because the real power of silence is this. It teaches you that the only thoughts about you that matter are your own. But don't underestimate how much his perception shifts. In his quiet moments when no one's watching, when he's not posturing or pretending, he thinks about the version of you who gave him chance after chance, and he compares her to the version of you who now gives him nothing. And that comparison makes him realize something he never wanted to face. That your silence is the proof that you're done explaining, done chasing, done needing. And that realization cuts deeper than any words ever could. So what does he really think about you when you go silent? He thinks you're stronger than he realized. He thinks you've changed. He thinks he may have lost something irreplaceable. He thinks you are no longer under his control. And while his ego may wrestle with those truths, his subconscious cannot deny them. Your silence rewrites the story he tells himself about you. And whether he admits it or not, what he really thinks is this: she finally chose herself. And here's the most powerful part. What he thinks about you is no longer your concern, because silence is not about winning his approval or proving your worth. Silence is about reclaiming your peace. And when you choose peace over proving, you shift the entire dynamic. He's left with his thoughts. You're left with your freedom. And in the end, no matter what he really thinks, your silence makes the loudest statement of all: I don't need your validation to know my value. Silence is not just a strategy, it's a transformation. It's not about punishing him or proving a point. It's about what happens inside of you when you stop giving your energy away. The moment you decide to hold your tongue, resist the urge to send that text, and sit with yourself, instead of chasing someone else, something shifts. Silence becomes a mirror, showing you not only who he is, but who you are without the noise. And that's where the transformation begins. When you go silent, you give yourself the gift of space. For so long, your energy was wrapped around his behavior. You thought about what he was doing, what he wasn't doing, what he was thinking, what he wasn't saying. You explained, you defended, you repeated yourself until your words lost meaning. All of that mental and emotional energy left little room for you. Silence clears that space. Suddenly, without constant explaining or arguing, you have room to breathe. You have room to feel your own emotions without someone else's interference. And in that breathing space, clarity emerges. You begin to see patterns you missed before. You notice the moments where you gave too much, where you ignored red flags, where you abandoned yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Silence strips away the distractions and excuses. Without his voice constantly filling the air, you finally hear your own, and that voice, your voice, has been waiting to guide you back to yourself. Silence also builds discipline. Every time you resist the urge to break it, you prove something powerful to yourself, that you are stronger than your impulses, that you don't need to respond just because your emotions demand it, that you can choose peace over chaos. And each time you hold that line, you build self-trust. You begin to believe in your ability to control yourself, to make decisions that honor you, instead of decisions that chase someone else. This discipline is transformational because it's not about controlling him, it's about mastering yourself. Another way silence transforms you is by shifting your identity. Before, you might have seen yourself as the one who always reaches out, the one who always fixes, the one who always explains. Silence disrupts that story. It reintroduces you to a different version of yourself, the woman who is calm, self-possessed, untouchable. And as you sit in that new identity day by day, you begin to realize something life-changing. You don't need to perform to be valuable. Your worth does not depend on being heard, validated, or chosen by someone else. Your worth is intrinsic, and silence gives you the stillness to feel it. Silence also transforms the way you experience time. In the past, your days may have revolved around waiting for his message, checking for his call, analyzing his responses. But when you go silent, that cycle breaks. The minutes and hours that used to be consumed by him return to you. You begin to notice how much energy you once wasted and how much possibility exists when you reclaim it. You start investing that time into yourself, your goals, your healing, your passions, and slowly you realize that the more silent you are toward him, the louder your own life becomes. There's also a deep spiritual transformation that comes from silence. When you stop chasing someone who doesn't value you, you open yourself to something greater. You reconnect with your intuition. You remember the part of you that always knew you deserved better. You start to feel grounded, centered, aligned. And in that alignment, you stop asking, why doesn't he see my value? And start affirming, I don't need him to see it. I see it. That shift alone is liberation. Silence also heals your nervous system. Arguments, explanations, and emotional battles keep your body in a state of stress. You're always on edge, waiting for his next move, his next word, his next disappointment. But silence lowers that noise. It gives your body rest. Your sleep improves. Your mood stabilizes. You stop living in fight or flight, and you start living in peace. That physical healing creates mental clarity and emotional strength. The transformation isn't just internal, it's in your body too. And perhaps the most beautiful transformation is the confidence silence builds. At first, silence feels unnatural. You want to break it, to prove your point, to make him understand. But the longer you hold it, the more confident you become in your ability to stand on your own. You realize you don't need closure from him. You've already given it to yourself. You don't need his validation. You validate yourself every time you choose silence over chaos. That confidence radiates. People around you notice it. And most importantly, you notice it. The real magic of silence is that it's not about him at all. It's about you reclaiming yourself. It's about creating boundaries without saying a word. It's about rewriting the story of who you are. And it's about proving not to him, but to yourself that you are enough without anyone else's attention. That transformation is priceless. So why does silence transform you? Because it teaches you that you are not powerless. You are not desperate. You are not weak. You are strong enough to withhold your words, disciplined enough to resist your impulses, and wise enough to choose peace over chaos. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you finally know your value doesn't require an audience. Every day you stay silent, you reinforce a truth that changes everything. I don't need to be heard to be powerful. My silence is my strength. My peace is my priority, and my transformation is mine alone. Silence is not emptiness. It is not weakness. It is not surrender. Silence is a declaration, a boundary, a reclamation of power. Every time you choose to hold back words that will fall on deaf ears, every time you resist the urge to beg someone to see your worth, every time you protect your peace instead of chasing chaos, you are saying something louder than any voice ever could. I know who I am, and I will no longer trade my value for crumbs of attention. What he thinks when you go silent is irrelevant. Whether he doubts, regrets, or finally becomes aware, that's his journey. What matters is what silence gives back to you. It restores your clarity, it sharpens your self-respect, it grounds you in your worth, and it transforms you from someone who once sought validation outside to someone who carries it firmly within. You don't need to fight to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You don't need to prove to anyone why you deserve love, respect, or commitment. Your silence already speaks it, because silence is the voice of strength. It's the proof of your resilience. It's the sound of you choosing yourself. So let your silence be sacred. Let it be the wall that protects your peace, the mirror that reflects your strength, and the path that leads you back to yourself. And remember this, true power isn't found in the noise of convincing someone else. True power is found in the quiet, unshakable certainty that you will never again lower your voice, your standards, or your soul, just to be heard. Your silence is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of your transformation. And from that transformation, you rise, not with noise, not with desperation, but with undeniable, unstoppable strength.